Hello! Thank you for clicking on this video. I know that like you guys are more used to my reaction videos, but I want to do more of this kind of stuff where I kind of share a little bit of my own life with you. So I want to do more in this kind of series of these videos, you know, the music that made me, the music that inspired me and kind of changed my life in a lot of ways. And I thought one of the best things for me to show you, and the biggest way in which music kind of changed me, was with Glee and with Born This Way. Before we get started though, if you're new, then make sure to subscribe and also make sure to give this video a like. And if you want to see more of these kinds of videos, then make sure to leave a comment. That kind of will tell me, like, you know, this is the kind of stuff we want to see. And if you want to check out more of my actual like day-to-day life, you can do so on Instagram. My handle is @SingSongDan, and the link's in the description so you can follow it there. So when I went to senior school, I was 12 years old. You know, as you can imagine, I was quite an effeminate, very sensitive, quietish kid. And shortly after I got there, I started getting a lot of bullying. It was rarely physical. It was mostly kind of this kind of mental kind of thing where people would, I don't know, like most days, maybe a couple of times a day, at least, people would walk past me and say under their breath, gay, or worse, you know. And it has a way of like just breaking you down over a long amount of time. And I think it was at its worst for like 2 or 3 years, but I very much like felt like an outcast. I felt like that I wasn't deserving of love. I felt like I wasn't ever going to find the kind of love that I wanted in my heart, you know. I felt that I was never going to be able to have kids or get married or all this kinds of stuff. And it all kind of came out of this like real kind of derogatory feeling that I got at senior school. Thankfully, I had a group of friends who I kind of shared these experiences with, and we kind of went through it together. We were the kids in the choir. There's a lot of parallels now I'm thinking about it. And we were actually all friends in the choir. We started the choir, I think I was 14, so like the choir was really my lifeboat. And so my experiences up to that point very much mirrored the experiences of the kids in Glee. And so a couple of years after that, when Glee actually came onto TV, and it was about all these musical kids who were very creative, very sensitive, and were getting a lot of bullying for being gay, all came together and sang together. It was mind-blowing. I remember watching the first episode by myself, actually. I think said to my parents, like, I watched it and was like, oh my god, this is so good. And that first episode where they're on the stage and they're doing Don't Stop Believing, and it's like that whole thing. And I was like, said to my parents, you have to watch this. So I made them watch it, and as a family we started watching Glee together every single week. And as much as like the character of Kurt is, and actually most of the characters are based on stereotypes, there was a lot that I saw of myself in Kurt, and there were a few key moments I think that were just incredibly important for me. One being when Kurt came out to his dad, and watching that scene with my dad right there, and watching Kurt come out to his dad and his dad be totally accepting of the whole thing and being really lovely despite him being quite a kind of gruff, you know, man's man. That did something to me, you know. And watching my dad watch it and him enjoy it, watch it, you know, it was such an important thing. And I think the other thing was like when in season 2, when Kurt meets Blaine and they sing Teenage Dream, like that was a really important moment. Oh my god, because it was like, oh my god, Blaine's an absolute hottie. I was obsessed with him and Darren Criss for the longest time. I mean, I still am, let's be honest. And yeah, like to sit there, and I remember looking at my dad's face when we were watching that, and he was getting like emotional, like watching it and seeing the kind of romance on the TV, and he was getting it, he was understanding it, he was seeing two guys fall in love, and he was feeling that storyline, you know. I think the important thing was that like they didn't come out saying ew like my nan did once when we were watching Doctor Who. And so like on so many different moments, this TV show really started to show me that my family were going to be okay with it, that they were totally accepting of it, at least, you know, in terms of watching it on TV, and B, that like it showed me a storyline where two young guys, same age as me, going through the same things as me in the bloody choir, could find love. And like I felt like I hadn't had any example of that shown to me at that point. I had never seen two guys fall in love, but it wasn't until Born This Way that it actually all clicked into place, and I felt inspired enough to actually do something about it. Yes, so as you can see, I put this one here for a reason, despite the fact that it keeps on stealing the autofocus. My Oh, there we go. So Born This Way came out. Actually, it was 11 years ago today. I've got my t-shirt on. I didn't even plan that. I just put it on this morning and then was like, oh, that's good. It was 11 years ago today, so it's all very serendipitous, the fact that I'm filming it today. So Born This Way comes out. I was like a mild fan of Lady Gaga by that point, but like the music was a little bit like too experimental for my young ears at that point. You know, it's now one of my favourite albums of all time, and like I've learned to appreciate it as I've got older. The thing about Born This Way that makes the song so good, it's a relatable story that she starts off as like, you know, something that she learned when she was young and she's taking on with her. So she makes a very personal story, relates it to her so it doesn't feel preachy, and then it goes into the chorus and has this big moment where she's telling the person listening, you were born this way, no matter gay, straight or bi, lesbian, transgender life, you're on the right track, baby, you were born to survive. This is how you were born, it's part of your DNA, there's nothing wrong with you. And I think the fact is that the song is so catchy and so hooky and so memorable, it was poppy enough that everyone could listen to it. It was a vehicle for the masses to kind of hear this message of self-love, self-acceptance and acceptance of other people around you, no matter who they are or how they identify. And that was the message that they then took into this episode of Glee and made it even more digestible for the people watching, you know. And that was the moment that it really hit me. I remember it very clearly. They all did, it was like a bit of a mashup with the George Michael thing, where they all wore the Choose Life style t-shirts, but they actually did it with like revealing their sexualities and their gender expressions, and it was all like things that they wanted to come out about, you know, the fact they couldn't dance, or the fact they couldn't sing, or the fact that they couldn't, you know, whatever, you know, things that they've been bullied about. And they came on stage in these plain white t-shirts with these big bold patterns on them just to sing this song Born This Way. It just felt like the entire Glee cast and Lady Gaga and all this music was telling me that it was okay to be exactly the way I was. And it was that kind of messaging that I'd never got before, really. I'd never had that messaging before. Like up until this, my experience of sexuality was being bullied for it before I'd even like realised who I was. And it wasn't something that you talked about with your parents until you came out, you know, at that point. Especially because before Glee, like there wasn't really a mainstream piece of media where our generation could talk to our parents about it, you know, in a frank way. And so it inspired me. And I remember that night lying in bed, like just thinking of that song, thinking of the meaning of the words, thinking of how all these people on this TV show have been so brave to go on stage and say who they were, as proud as they could be. And I got out of bed and I went to my parents' room. I sat on their bed and and I said to them, I've got something to tell you. Classic. I think my mum said something like, oh, we thought you'd already figured that one out. I was like, no. This is me telling you. Yeah, so I bless them, like they just kind of gave me a hug and were just like, yeah, that's cool. It was just totally chill. They were a bit worried about like what the world would kind of have in store for me, but like thankfully since then the world has changed and has become far more accepting, and it's because of Lady Gaga and it's because of shows like Glee, where they've changed like mainstream people's opinions and views of gay people. And with the kind of power of music has inspired people like me and my generation, like LGBT people, my generation across the world, to be able to actually speak their truth and feel like they have something backing them up, you know. And that kind of really is the power that music can have, you know. And it's one of the first cases in which music has really changed my life in that way. You might have seen my other video about Spring Awakening, the musical, that was also hugely inspirational for me in terms of my journey and discovering myself and stuff. But yeah, it wasn't until this moment with Glee and Lady Gaga that I managed to actually find the courage to actually properly, you know, to actually come out. And of course, coming out isn't a one-time thing. Like I've had to come out many times throughout my entire life. Like university was a whole other situation. I've now got some interesting kind of coping mechanisms where I slightly drop about how hot Jake Gyllenhaal is. That's quite a good one. It is something that's changing, and actually most people don't give a shit, and so much of that is representation. And I think that's why, you know, LGBT YouTubers particularly bang on about representation and talk about it a lot, is because it gives other people an ally. It gives them somebody who is like them saying, you know what, I'm gay, I've done it, I've come out, it was okay, I'm living a great life. And the representation in the media is something I didn't have when I was really young. I'm really glad that Glee came out when it did, because like before that there was nothing. You didn't even really have the token gay characters in all the movies and stuff I was watching, which is, I mean, it's a whole other problem itself. But and actually the other side of it is that it makes people who aren't part of the LGBT community see stories of normal people going through normal things. They just happen to fancy someone of the same gender, or they happen to have a different gender expression to everybody else. You know, it makes it relatable for, you know, the general public, makes it more digestible, makes it more relatable. And over the course of, you know, the last like 20 years, the view of gay people has changed from, you know, a community that people generally thought of as paedophiles when I was young, and, you know, sexual predators, to just another person. And so much of that is down to the media, TV and music. I mean, it's still got a long way to go. I do feel like it has come a really long way, but a lot of it hasn't necessarily depicted a very relatable, normal gay relationship. One TV show that seems to be making huge waves is Heartstopper, and I watched that and was like, oh my god, oh my god, oh my god. But it just shows like a normal teenage romance. It just happens to be between two guys, but it shows like in a realistic way, you know, people having to deal with like coming out, people having to deal with like confusion over their sexuality. Are they bisexual? Are they pansexual? It's just very much a mainstream TV show that is showing people what that experience is like and how normal it is, and how actually if those people can empathize with the characters in Heartstopper, then it means that they can empathize with me, you know. And that is the kind of most important thing, and something that Glee kicked off for me and was instrumental in my upbringing. I hope that, like, in a small way at least, in me sharing my own experiences, it gives somebody out there a video they can watch. You know, maybe someone who hasn't come out can watch this video and maybe feel good about themselves, and maybe feel confident enough to embrace themselves. Because I think that's something that I want to perpetuate on the channel as much as I possibly can, is that, like, if you go into anything with an open mind, with an open ear, then if you listen, if you understand, then you can make everybody around you feel great, and you can make yourself feel great, and you can experience things you never experienced before in music, but also in life, you know. So if you want to hear more of these kind of stories, I have a few others that I've kind of thought of before. Make sure to leave a comment, and of course make sure to leave any comments of your own experiences of Glee or Born This Way and how it touched you. You know, there's something that I love about the community of the channel, is really hearing about your relations with music and how it's inspired you in your life. So yeah, make sure to leave a comment if you have any of your own stories.